I'd say it's fairly relaxed as a podcast. We
Yeah,
record
I
for about an hour. Yeah.
try to listen to a few just because I like to know exactly what the preferred tone of a podcast is or whatever.
What are you getting
I don't want to
yourself
mess up
into?
what am I walking into? And I don't want to mess up your thing. But I was very pleased to see that, wow, everything's really nice and chill and conversational and a lot of really smart people. So I don't know if I can help you out on that end, but at least
I
it
mean,
seems very relaxed.
it's what we aim for. We aim for relaxed. I mean, I make up 50% of the dumb on a call, so
Well,
we're always there.
we might hit 100% today.
We'll be great. In that case, we'll get started. Thank
Sure.
you for coming on the show. Welcome to the show, Graham.
Thanks. I'm very, very happy to be here.
Which is, the more I said that kind of prior, like your name, because my name's Graham, it weirded me out.
Well, do you not, I presume in England, UK, you would have come across more Grahams than you normally do?
Very not as many as you'd think.
Huh. Because
I
I
only know
found
about three, I think.
interesting. Because I found, I spent, 26 years living and working in the States, mostly on the
Mm-hmm.
West Coast in San Francisco area and then Portland. And my name was like foreign, like so weird to people. Like they just could not, and a lot of people just couldn't wrap their heads around. I was always called Grant or
Grant, that's a new
Greg,
one.
Greg. It was always like a weird thing
Yeah.
that it would go to. But since returning, I've only recently come back to live in Canada, which is where I was born and raised. People seem to know Graham here, and I just put it down to, okay, it's the British Empire thing. I think the legacy of that name is just more British in tone, I
Yeah,
suppose.
it's the scars of our retreat, just like remaining behind. And I appreciate the fact that you pronounce it the same as I do,
Yeah,
because the commonality is Graham,
Graham. Yeah, you just drop
and
it,
it
and
just I don't know, it just hurts me.
you're suddenly part of the metric system. It's
Yeah,
weird.
I'm suddenly just Graham. I don't even use my name when I get to Starbucks because
Well, yeah,
they get it wrong so often. So I call myself Frank because it's
there you
easy
go.
to understand and it's a mirror.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep.
Cool. So I mean, we'll start off with the basic question: who are you?
Well, I'm Graham.
You are.
Isn't it obvious?
I'm gonna have an existential crisis, but
Who am I? I don't know. I have been working in animation and comics for quite some time now. Uh, and the more projects and things I do, the more I'm told to try to distill down the answer to that. And as you can already tell, I ramble and I don't know how to answer that really neatly and nicely. But yes, I I've been a filmmaker, an animator, a cartoonist is, I guess, the word that I like to use the most because I feel like that gently blankets and overlaps a lot of things that I do. But
yeah,
over the years, I've worked in video games, I've worked in film, I've worked in uh, comics. I've kind of just been in between and on top of all kinds of things within those mediums mostly. So yeah, I guess if people are really trying to figure out who the heck I am, the thing I'm probably known the most for, I co-directed the Box Trolls, which was an animated feature at Laika a number of years ago. And I was a story artist there for Coraline and Paranorman and a little bit on Kubo and of course the Box Trolls. Um, so yeah, I've done a bunch of stuff and I continue to do a bunch of things. I try hard not to get put in a box, but sometimes it's probably smarter to do that.
yeah, I can very much appreciate that. I mean, it's a conversation I have with myself quite a lot, which is, I don't want to be pigeonholed. I don't want to be one
No, but
thing. I want to be all these things.
yeah.
But like you say, it's a lot easier to kind of find an audience, get the right thing if you only do one thing.
Well, yeah, because none of us have the capacity to absorb a whole plethora of things that somebody does. They just want to know, like, oh, that's the guy to go to for this, or that's the person that I would watch for that, and I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah,
But as an artist, yeah, I want to be able to do anything I feel like.
yeah. Just have things happen and do things. I
Yeah.
mean, like you say, I mean, when I kind of looked you up more, so I originally found your work, as you said, through the box trolls. That was my first kind of real encounter with you.
Hmm.
But then I realized that it wasn't,
Oh.
because I looked up the previous things you'd done, and the other films you'd worked on, and you were involved with the Goofy movie at one point, I think, and you do comics and you write Grickle, and there's all these extra things which I suddenly realized that I've interacted with, absorbed all of this media, not realizing who it was coming from
Mm.
and who was involved with it. And that's why I kind of reached out mainly, because I was like, there's a lot of threads to this which I hadn't realized.
Yeah, a bit of an onion, lots of layers.
Yeah,
Hopefully. Uh, cool. Wow. Yeah. A Goofy movie. Yeah, that was quite some time ago.
yeah. And like you say, kind of working with video games as well,
Hmm.
kind of
Yeah,
the background. Yeah,
I had a lengthy stint working as an animator, mostly at LucasArts, which was George Lucas's video game company, and then after that, working with Telltale Games, which might be more people might know that company. I don't know. They did a lot of adventure stuff.
yeah.
And during that time, I got to do a game created on my own stuff called Puzzle Agent, which I feel like it's a toss up between people either know me from Box Trolls or they
Yeah.
know me from Puzzle Agent. It's kind of the gateway.
Really,
Yeah.
I would have thought Grickle would have been your like main crux.
Some people, but I don't know. These days, at least, it kind of shifts as time goes on. But these days, I do feel like a lot of people know of me through Puzzle Agent, oddly enough.
I'm not a person who believes in kind of fate, but I'm willing to accept that heavy coincidence does happen. But it was kind of the same day I got the email from you to say, "Oh yeah, we should do this," and I'm happy to come on. I was in a used bookstore in New York, and I found Stickleback,
Oh my gosh.
a copy of Stickleback, and I was buying that at the time, and I was like, "This is nice. This is just a nice thing of the world aligning in its view."
Wow, that's wild. Yeah, I don't imagine there's too many copies to find of Stickleback out there these days. It was a pretty small print run. That's cool. Wow.
It was perhaps the most relatable comic I've read in quite a while. And, the whole idea of just having ideas at the wrong moment,
Hmm.
and getting struck by inspiration and kind of looking there. And because I was thinking the other day, I think I was tweeting about it, that inspiration always comes at the worst time,
Hmm.
but there is no worse time to get that inspiration than maybe 4 or 5 situations, like running on a treadmill or the middle of being intimate with someone. All of those periods are the worst times to get inspiration.
Yes. Yep.
So finding it was a nice bookend.
Oh, that's funny. That's great.
So I mean, to kind of follow up then, in terms of the work which you've done, we spoke a little bit about what we would talk about today.
Yes. Yeah, I know. That was the other part. I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
I get to pick the topic. And it's like, ooh. And as you know, on via email, I was suggesting that we could talk about horror comics or stop motion animation. And then I think I've spent the rest of the time now panicking, like, do I even know enough about either of those subjects to make this interesting? I don't know. Uh, and I also realize, and I'll just say this up front, that part of my reason for saying horror comics is because it's incredibly self-serving, because I have spent the last 5 years doing a horror comic for middle school readers, sort of ages 8 to 12, and that's coming out this July. And I've been lucky to work on a lot of different things and a lot of different mediums, but this particular project is like one of the few things I think I've done where I was like, wow, I wasn't asked, or I didn't compromise on anything in terms artistically of what I wanted to make with this thing.
yeah,
Um, it's funny to me that I mean, it makes sense, but it's, the publisher and the editor and everybody, early days of looking at it, were like, oh, this is perfect. This is a great Halloween book for middle school kids. And I didn't even think about that in terms of an audience. I was just really making horror stories for myself. It was something I'd been doing on the side. and put them together into an actual thing that I could present. And when they said it was for middle school readers, I was like, huh, I guess that is naturally where my sensibility lies. I don't know, but
Yeah.
anyway, that was the self-serving reason for me to bring up the topic of horror comics, and now I've just done my little blurb, and we can leave it at that. I don't want to be turning
we
this
can
into a
we can tell
massive
the people.
commercial.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say we can tell the people to go out buy the book when it comes out.
Yeah, well, you can pre-order it now if you want.
There we go.
It is out there.
That is the
But
beauty of the internet.
yeah, so I thought that, and I thought stop motion, because stop motion, I've been lucky enough to direct a stop motion movie,
Mm.
and I've worked at, probably one of the greatest, best studios that's ever existed for making stop motion film or animated features. Um, but I've never actually animated in stop motion. It's the hardest. I mean, animation's hard on any level, but stop
Mhm.
motion is the worst way to do it. Uh,
Says
uh,
having worked on many stop motion films,
yeah,
but
I've seen enough of it to know that, yeah, I couldn't do what those animators do.
it does seem very self-punishing stop motion.
Yeah, I
As
mean,
yeah, I don't know, as a culture, as a medium, it just doesn't seem. And I say this fully knowing in my head that I want to make a stop motion film
well,
or stop motion shorts, but I know that it's futile as an effort.
it's so painful. I mean, everything works against you. When I was, directing on the box trolls, the Tony Stocky, the other co-director, he was very fond of saying it, and it's so true. He was like, "Man, stop motion essentially combines like the worst aspects of live action filmmaking and animation, and then just puts them together. Like everything that's can go wrong is just compounded by the process of doing it as a stop motion thing. Just so many weird, unique things to that process. One of the ones that I always think about is the set swell, is what they would call it, during production. And so, you've got all these stages out there where the animators are working, and they're working on physical sets with the physical puppets and all that stuff. And the building temperature was such a big deal, because if overnight the temperature dropped rapidly, or or got really hot, typically it would mess up some of the sets, because they would swell or contract enough that it would screw up the shot. By the time the animator showed up the next day at work to do something, you'd see this like weird undulating thing in the finished shot. And they've got lots of different little techniques to safeguard against that, where they composite and make sure they can put in a still background if they have to. But just like stuff like that, like temperature in a room can screw
Yeah.
up your animation. There's no other form of animation that has to worry about the temperature of the room. I mean, it might be cold some days when you're drawing or working on your computer, but you don't have to worry about it actually messing up your work.
No, it's yeah. I guess that real world aspect, you like you say, you do just forget about. There's no way to think of like, oh, there's always that quote about the library being built and they forgot about the books, and so the library sinks every year like a few feet. And yeah, when it comes to slow motion, that's a concern, right? Of like dust collecting on things between the
Mm-hmm.
several years you're working on things and having to clean everything. And I don't know. I've I was having this thought earlier, which I'm curious what you think about, is about forms of creation and how we create as kind of human beings. It seems to me that animation's the most human because we seem to be the only species that do anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really know what it says about us as a species that we started creating things, we started drawing on walls, and all of a sudden we said to ourselves, no, we need to take this further. I need to be able to bring things to life, and I need to be able to make miniatures of other things. And I don't understand.
I I kind of agree. When I started on Coraline and started working on that production and storyboarding, again, walked into that, got that job without truly understanding or appreciating what stop motion was and is. And it didn't really sink in Because as a story team, as a story artist, you're typically the first crew on in production, and you're kind of the first crew off in a production because you're doing all the early work to get everything set up and going. So when we started, there was, there really wasn't much from the other departments that was built or created at that point. Everybody was still in the planning stages of things, and obviously we were helping that along. But there was a point where the very first set, I think, was finished, and it was up on stages, and it was final lighting and all that was all set. It was all ready for an animator to get going. Um, and it was I don't remember, I don't know how well you remember Coraline or that film, but there was the whole other world,
Mm-hmm.
and there was what they called the Pink Palace, and it was the whole Victorian house. And this was the first set that they kind of completed. And we all, as a story team, we're all like, let's go sneak down and look at it on stages, and it'll be cool. And so we went all down there, and the way it is at Laika, and I'm sure it is at most big stop motion places, it's all shrouded in black curtains so that you don't have any light bounce or anything like that. So it's this curtained room, and you just pull back the curtains, and we went in, and it was just it was the trippiest and most amazing thing, because it was this huge set and this entirely miniaturized Victorian home that was like complete, every little detail was in it and on it. And on top of that, the time of day for that particular scene shot, whatever, was like sort of twilight. So it was like this dusky kind of orangey glow, and they had all these little pinpoint stars in the background. And because that film in particular, out of all the ones we did at Leica, that one in particular, I think because it was Henry Selick's film, he wanted to do as much practically as possible. He did not
Yeah.
want to rely too much on CG. He wanted that flavor of everything feeling handcrafted in it. But anyway, it blew me away, because you walked into that little space and you were just instantly transformed. I mean, it's like going to an amazing art installation, I guess, or a lot of theater productions, and that ability, if it's crafted really well, like, it's just wild how it does transport you in a way that nothing else does. There's no other form of animation that would have that level of like putting you in that
Mm-hmm.
place, and I've often said too that, I mean, the films from Leica are beautiful and they're amazing, and they're extra special if you get to see like 3D screenings on a massive screen.
Yeah.
It still doesn't quite get you there though. Like, if you get the opportunity to see these physical things in person, I don't know, it's just wild. There's something so innate in us about miniaturizing things. I don't know what it is. I guess it's why we got our little action figures and we like to play with the dolls and all the rest of it, but there's something about miniaturized stuff that is just super appealing to like almost everybody, it seems.
It does seem that way, and the thought I kept having in my head, because I've been seeing a lot of kind of just online content of different people creating miniatures and creating these scenes, and the thought I keep having in my head is, no other species would make a miniature washing machine. Like, a miniature washing machine to me just seems like the pinnacle of human creation. The fact that not only did we create a washing machine, we then decided, you know what, I need a scale version of this, and I
Yeah.
want to put it somewhere, and I want to watch it. Whereas, like, a dog would never think anything like that. They'd never sit and think, you know what, I've got a bone. I want a really small bone, not that I can eat, just to put on a shelf.
Just to admire it. Yeah.
Yeah, just to study the world a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think animation in itself is that need to emulate life, which is all forms of art, I suppose, whether it's a painting or whatever. But yeah, animation goes that one step further, where you really are bringing things eh, seemingly alive, and that's just endlessly fascinating for us. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
It's the same as when I think of kind of other films as well, and I think whenever there's an animated version, I'm always more interested.
Hmm.
And
Well, it's that
I don't know.
stylization to it, right? That abstraction
Yeah.
of it, I suppose, that gets you intrigued. It's also conversely, I think, the thing that can turn you off pretty quickly. Like, we all have very specific aesthetic things that we get into, and I know for myself, like, have stupidly dismissed lots of animated films because at a glance I'm like, ugh, I don't really like
Oh, now
the
I'm
aesthetic.
curious.
The aesthetic's
Well,
not, the aesthetic's not appealing to me, or I've seen that before, or whatever. And then there's other stuff where it's like immediately I'm like, I want to watch all of that. Like every little, I want to consume it all. Like, oh my gosh, I knew I'd start forgetting names because I'm terrible. Oh, there's a couple, I think they're a couple. There's a pair of folks, I think they're Danish,
okay.
stop motion people. Um, they have done a bunch of shorts. There was a Netflix special called The House. It was an
Oh yeah,
animated.
I watched the house. Yep.
Have you seen it? Yeah.
I
So
have.
they did that first story with the,
Okay.
I don't want to give too much away, but turning into the furniture and all. I love everything they've done. Oh my God, I just cannot get enough of that aesthetic and the sort of felted puppets and things. It's just, I don't know what it is, man. I just cannot get enough of that. It's
I
amazing.
completely agree. I mean, to kind of go back to Coraline, I think when I remember seeing the trailer for Coraline, and my brain just suddenly clicked into gear of I need to see everything that comes out of this place. Like it doesn't matter what they make. I'm now, you know, sycophantic with it. I just need to see everything because this is scratch the itch
Yes.
of viewing everything. Whereas, like you say, you see other things and you think, you kind of just shrug them off. Like I think the most recent example I can think of for me was seeing all the kind of the CGI remakes of the
Mm.
Disney films and seeing them, and my brain just going, I have no interest in any of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that just seems like poorly regurgitated. And I don't want to diss other
Yeah.
films or things because I will also say, uh, having had that experience of co-directing the Box Trolls, I came out of the other end of that going, I will never disparage anyone who gets to the end of a film production, no matter what shape that thing turns out to be, because it's harrowing. There's so many things all day, every day, forever, trying to bring it down. And the fact that anybody completes any major project like that, like hats off, man.
Yeah, it's something I very much try to stay away from. I think it gets lost a lot online as well because we get so used to seeing negative comments about things. Whenever I look at something, I'm like, I've had the thought of I could point out what I don't like about this,
Yep.
but then in my own sense, I'm looking back through my old work, going, yes, but I would be crushed if someone said that about my own work, even though I can see the mistake, which they will point out.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can avoid that a little bit.
Yeah, I try. Yeah, I'm same. Try to avoid delving into the negativity of it all because it's, yeah, easy to do. And I still
It's
fall into it. I'm not going to say I'm not, but try not to.
Yeah, just the way what's the way I worded it was remember not everything's for you. You know, you don't
Yeah,
have to say something about it. You could just ignore it and just
yeah.
carry on.
Let someone else enjoy it. Or yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
There's no need to rain on parades.
sometimes.
Sometimes there is. Certain parades, yes, have it coming. Yes.
What I found interesting about, I mean, even now, kind of you mentioning writing a horror book for middle schoolers is whenever I looked up your work online,
Hmm.
you were described as quite a dark comic, and how your work's very dark.
Hmm.
But obviously, my first introduction to you really was the Box Trolls, which to me is quite a light-hearted film. And then the other films you worked on, bar from kind of the specifically horror-based things, were all quite light. And I was like, I don't understand where everyone's getting this impression, but maybe that's just my personality reading your work and going, I can agree with this.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely, yeah, I have come to learn that I suppose the things that I gravitate to on my own are I guess more dark humor-ish, like that video game series Puzzle Agent. You know, not intentionally, but it definitely has been described as a mashup of Fargo meets Twin Peaks. So it's weird and dark and it is comedic, but yeah, it goes to sort of scary horror themed places. It's the stuff. It's the kind of stuff I enjoy the most, I guess. But I don't know. I never set out to do something dark. I just do stuff that's of interest to me. Um, and a lot of people categorize that stuff as dark. And I know that I think my art style, is very simplistic looking. It's pretty doodly and all the rest of it. And so I think that can sort of catch people off guard because on the surface it does look pretty friendly and simple, and it is, but yeah, but a lot of themes and things that I weave into stuff tend to be what a lot of folks call dark, but I just call funny or interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I describe dark. Most dark things tend to be funny, or you make them funny to avoid being too upset about the dark thing that you're seeing.
Well, there's a level of like I again, I love horror things, but I don't like a lot of horror when it's too self-important or too self-serious within its own thing. Like, I don't know. There's got to be a level of self-deprecation or humor to it. I don't know. It just that always works the best for me. I do a live drawing thing every Sunday on my Instagram, and it's basically it's a way of me maintaining and continuing my friendship with Julian Nariño, because I worked with him for years at Laika, and we were both story artists. And you know, I've since moved away from Portland, and I'm far from Julian, and it makes me sad. So we get together every Sunday, and we just draw. And our favorite, one of our things that we certainly bonded over and continue to bond over, is our absolute love of Evil Dead 2, specifically
Yeah,
that second one by Sam Raimi. And I don't know how familiar you are with that film, but
I'm familiar with that
yeah, we
movie.
talk endlessly about that movie. And it's that bizarre combo that that film achieved of humor and absolute horror that hits, like as you mentioned earlier about scratching the itch, like that
Mhm.
for me scratched the itch like perfectly. I don't know if it's been anything since that has scratched it so perfectly well. And it's that bizarre combo of funny with you know, full on actual scary things.
Yeah,
Um, I
it's,
don't know.
I was just going to say, I think horror to me seems like one of the hardest genres to approach, I guess, in a way. Like when I think of kind of the drama and what's the word is going out of my head. I was going to say tension, but that's not really a genre.
Thriller,
Thriller.
thriller,
That's the word I'm looking
maybe.
for. Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, kind of like thriller or investigation films or anything like that. There's a very clear formula to what makes it fit into the genres. Whereas horror, I mean, I don't watch a lot of horror mainly because I can't suspend disbelief enough to kind of
Yeah.
get into it. And I think people who attempt it, you're setting a much higher challenge for yourself because everyone's scared of something else. Everyone's scared of different things. So to make something horror is I don't know, maybe more of a challenge than trying other things. I don't know if you found that.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, when I think about the things that I like in horror, again, I actually don't watch a ton of horror either, because a lot of it, yeah, I just don't, it just doesn't work for me. It's just a level, what it chooses to focus on is just not of interest to me. The stuff that works best for me, you know, like I was mentioning Evil Dead 2, like the combination, the bizarre, unique combination of humor and horror is always something that interests me. But the other part of horror that always will interest me is that level of I guess it's sort of Hitchcocky style. Like I don't want to see too much ever. Always want
Hmm.
that. I appreciate a filmmaker who can keep you guessing, and uh the sense or level of dread or tension that builds within a film is always fascinating if you can hold it, if you can retain that, because it's really hard to do. We're all pretty smart these days in terms of watching films, and we're
Yeah,
always looking for that way to go, yeah, no, screw this. I've already know where this is going and I'm done, and you check out kind of thing.
yeah.
Like I'm trying to think of like Ari Aster. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he did Hereditary.
Hmm.
And that to me has been like one of the greatest horror films that's been made in a long while. And it's just because, man, it just did such a good job of slow burn buildup of all this tension, and you were always sort of guessing as to where it was going to end up or go. And his other one, Midsummer,
Hmm. Yeah.
is pretty wild in spots. Stuff like that I really, really enjoy. It scares the hell out of me though. I really do still get really scared. I'm very, very particular about which film I'm gonna allow in to scare me.
Who's going to be allowed in the house to
Yeah, yeah. It's I can't handle watching a ton of horror, to be honest, but I really appreciate it when it's done.
yeah.
I won't say well, but when it's done to my taste, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'm very much kind of along the same lines. I like a horror. I like a horror when I don't know it's going to be a horror.
Hmm.
Like something where you start watching it and it's just like, yeah, this could be any film. Like could be literally any film, and then halfway through you're like, oh,
Yeah, when you get that nice twist of something like, oh, this is not that. This is this, I
yeah.
think.
Yeah. I think. I mean, it's about probably a bad example. I think the last time I remember that is watching The Orphanage, which is
I still
Guillermo.
haven't seen that one. I've heard that that was good. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously Guillermo del Toro, and which I'm butchering pronunciation of, but yeah, I think obviously most people know him from creating kind of quite surreal horror icons and films and stories, and I kind of I knew nothing about it going in watching it.
That's
I
always the best to
assumed,
watch any film, honestly,
yeah,
right? If you know nothing going in, that's the greatest thing because you absorb it so much more because I think your brain does. I know my brain, you go into a frantic search of trying to categorize and you're trying to understand the tone, and that's when you pull it all in. But when you go in with the preconceived notion of, oh, this is a rom-com, or oh, this is this, and you've already got the parameters all safely set up, it's just not as fun a ride. But it's
no,
weird because Hollywood works opposite to that. You need to know the product you're buying. And so all the trailers
yeah.
do everything they can to make sure you know what you're getting before you go in, and that kills all the fun.
I was just going to say it's a complete opposition to what marketing for media does these
Hmm.
days. Is just they lay everything out flat,
Yeah.
and though my main gripe at the minute is trailers which cut things up to make sentences, to make it seem like a scene's happening all at once, and like, oh, this person reacts this way and this person reacts this way, but you're watching the backgrounds of the actors and the animations, and you go, these are completely separate scenes, and they're just trying to make it seem kind of like a sound bite of audio, or whatever they can fit onto TikTok, and just watching it going, I feel like they're just butchering people's work now. Like we've
Yeah.
moved
Oh,
past advertising.
I'm sure. And I think for the movie studio, I mean, there's studios that are just completely dedicated to making the trailers, and so they're completely outside of what it was in terms of making the film. They just get that product and then now have to figure out how to maximize it for whatever trend in marketing's happening at that time and try to hit with it. Yeah, it's a whole weird process, and just how everybody absorbs advertising in general has shifted a lot and it's gotten really weird. Um, yeah,
It's got
I haven't, I
good.
don't go to, I was just going to say, I don't, with COVID, like everyone else, I've really, and having moved to a new area that we're living in a very small community here that there is no local theater. So I haven't been to an actual movie theater in a while. And I mean, that was the way we used to hear about trailers and get pumped about what was coming. And now it's all through streaming, but the streaming stuff is like for all of us is such a it just the algorithms and all the rest of it and how it's uh, I don't know. I feel like it's like you're in a massive video store, but you're never sure what part of the video store you're in, and you're not sure which things are there or not there, and you can't get back to that one part of the store that you remembered seeing something good. And it's weird. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. It's
Yeah,
all changed.
it's a strange it's a strange thought. I mean, just thinking on your thought there of being, it's like being in a massive video store. Of all I could think of is just being in a blockbuster and all the covers looking exactly the same, and just looking along the lines of like, I have no idea what any of these are about, because every single marketing agency has taken the same route for the poster for the people, and so I have nothing. And then, like you say, once in a while you might going along looking along the lines, like seen that, seen that, seen that, seen that, seen that, and then oh, what's this little thing I found on the shelf?
Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know. Just the way we all consume media now is just ever changing and always confusing.
It's hard to see where we'll go from this as well. I think like maybe 10 years ago, you could have kind of predicted this.
Mm-hmm.
Like as an outcome, you could see down the line, like, oh, everything's going to get a bit more homogenized, and social media will take more of an impact, and things will have to get shorter, and trying to get people's more attention because of Netflix and Redbox and all those kinds of things. And yeah, when I look at it now, I have literally no idea. And maybe that's just age based. I don't know if kids can look at it and go, yeah, this is where we're going. But
Yeah, I don't. That's what I wonder too. It's just like the whole. So I have two boys that are 14 and 11, and YouTube is kind of their go-to in terms of finding stuff or watching things that entertain them, and a lot of it is YouTubers just playing games and things, but they see and hear because of the way the advertising works on YouTube these days. They do see little movie trailers, so they get things that pop up in their peripheral of things they'd be interested in. I don't know. It's their whole basis of how they consume entertainment is so different now. Like, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's just a different way of doing it.
yeah,
And so much of their focus is clearly on video games as opposed to films and TV shows. They do enjoy and they will watch TV and series and movies, but so much percentage wise, so much less than what I know I consumed. Like movies were the pinnacle. That was the thing. The film that was like the feature film was the top way to tell the story, watch a story, absorb a story, and that's not the case anymore. It just isn't the way series works for TV or streaming. Like it's amazing to me how much it's just so effective for telling big stories and to getting to that level of immersion you kind of enjoy when you read a book. Like
mm,
you can go into all the backstories and context of so many characters, and a really well done series on HBO or wherever, has that ability because you can spread it out over the 12 episodes or and if now feature films feel like, wow, they're just such an abbreviated thing. I mean, the movies keep getting longer. Like it's
yeah,
amazing. Like the running length of stuff these days tends to be easily over 2 hours all the time now, and that was a big deal if you went over 2 hours of production.
yeah. I've,
And now
I've
it's kind of commonplace.
I vividly remember someone telling me that Titanic was 2 hours, and or something like that as a kid, and thinking 2 hours. That's a long film.
Yeah,
Like, is
who's
that
gonna
something?
sit
Yeah,
through that?
there's an intermission. What? Like that's insane. Who's gonna? No one's gonna stay for snacks and then go back in to like watch what they want to watch. Yeah, but they keep making it longer. That's yeah.
Yeah, well, it's become kind of the norm. Um, I don't. Yeah, it's interesting too because I feel like a lot of times my wife and I, as far as viewing habits go, like there's only so many hours in a day, and at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't know that if I could. I don't know that I could sit for 2.5 hours for this feature, but I will sit for an hour or a half hour and watch a show that I can keep following that story. It depends, I make we make the effort to watch film, but there's always this tendency to watch something just a little bit shorter, a little more
Mhm.
bite-sized, because I want to get to bed at a decent time, and I don't know. It's just so many more options, though. We have so much
Mm.
more content than we ever did at our fingertips because we
Yeah,
all can go to that video store immediately all the time and find something.
I mean it's in your pocket. Like
Yeah, it's right there,
it's right there in
always.
your pocket. It's interesting you said that though, because I find that I'm the other way. I I will watch a film as a throwaway, but it takes me a lot of effort to get invested in a series.
Oh, because
Sit down.
you'll end up.
Yeah, because I know there's like 10, 12 episodes or whatever. I mean, well, maybe like 20 episodes. I'm thinking UK TV versus American TV, and looking at that, my brain's going, yeah, but that's a lot of stuff to watch. Wouldn't you have like a nice rounded out hour and a half,
Hmm,
get some confirmation and satisfaction at the end of it, rather
true.
than two series in and then it gets cancelled.
That's true. Yeah, there is that threat for sure. Yeah, I guess you're thinking more big picture than me. You're thinking ahead of the entire time you're going to end up investing in it. Whereas I'm just like, well, I've only got about an hour before I want to go to bed, so I'm just going to watch this thing, and and then progressively work my way through it over days. But yeah, I don't know. It's fascinating. It keeps evolving.
It's interesting you mentioned that kind of level of immersion, which kind of video games has brought. Because again, I was thinking kind of in terms of horror, that to me, horror is one of those ones which immersion is hard. Generally, I think it does work better kind of with games because it's
Mm-hmm.
your choice which is going to hurt you or scare you or whatever. Whereas films, obviously, there's a level of you can watch and you can look away, and then you get books, which you're reading word by word, so you're putting it together so gradually that
Mm-hmm.
the tension almost builds itself. And then I think I've mentioned before in kind of a podcast with Kimatron, who's an illustrator from Nottingham, who was interested in making a horror graphic novel.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I thought that's probably the biggest challenge because the image is already there on the page. So as soon as you open it, you're seeing everything. And depending on how you read a comic, your immersion level will be based on the words or based on just you scanning the whole page and consuming all of it. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, it is interesting. It works similar but different than film for sure in terms of structuring and page turns become a big deal. Like staging that reveal of something to be on a page turn is always like, I think, something you should try to consider and be thinking towards. Um, I don't know. Again, having had the opportunity to make this book was really, I keep saying scratching the itch, but it was really satisfying in that I got to do something that I've wanted to see from myself. Like I feel
Mm-hmm.
like the comic I made, the aesthetic of it, the look of it, is in my style. So it's very it's very simplified, and there's something about that I love, marrying that with horror. Um, I did. I don't know if you've seen one of the other things I have been doing over the years, and I haven't done as much of lately. But I created animated shorts on YouTube, and I've done a whole bunch of those. I think I'm up to like 80 shorts at this point. And they're just weird little random ideas and things, whatever. And they're very simply executed, but it's great because I've gotten to explore a lot of things. But of course, a lot of those could be categorized as animated horror shorts. Um, and it's again the style. I don't know. I really like doing something very cartoony, but there's a level of real scare and dread and horror to it. And there's a level, I guess, because it's so drawn so cartoonish,
Mm.
it's sort of disarming. It allows you to go to some places that if you drew this realistically, it would just be in poor taste or not. It just wouldn't work the same way that it does. And I don't know, I've thought about this so much. I think this is part of the other reason I did mention about maybe just chatting about horror comics, 'cause I'm curious how much other people feel the same as me, that there's just, I can't point to a lot of things that have already existed that scratch this itch or fill that niche. Like one of the things I think about a lot is a long, long time ago, National Lampoon magazine. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
remember that one? If um, lots of not for children racy things in it. So it was always a cool magazine when I was like 11 or 12 to be able to peek into a National Lampoon. I don't know, a friend got a hold of a copy, but anyway, it was an issue that was dedicated to cartoons,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the cartoons in it was this strip called Squeak the Mouse, and it was by this Italian cartoonist Massimo Mattatoli. I don't know how to pronounce his name exactly. I've heard since that particular cartoon strip or comic was what kind of inspired Itchy and Scratchy on The Simpsons.
All right.
And again, it was done like a weird Tom and Jerry. It was
Yeah.
super, super simple cartoons, but it was wickedly gory and crazy. Like crazy stuff happened in it. It was zombies and undead stuff and mice coming back to kill the cat. And that thing is just like always stuck in my head. Is like that's the kind of I want more horror comics like that. Maybe not on that level of gratuitous violence and sexual things, but that simple thing of just simple drawings really having a lot of heft and scare to them is super appealing to me, and that's kind of what I tried to do with this book, I guess. It's kind of got about 5 short stories within it, but they all fold into one big overall story. And there's a lot of elements of like, I guess my attempt to recreate John Carpenter's The Thing, like that level of like crazy weird
Right.
body
Okay.
horror and all kinds of things, but in a way that isn't like, again, fits for the 8 to 12-year-old range, if
I
you can
was going to say,
imagine
there's
that.
like, this is for middle schoolers.
Yeah,
How
when I
far have you
describe
gone with
this,
this?
when I describe the stories, it's like, yeah, there's no way that would work for middle schoolers, but it does, or at least I think it did not, and my publisher thinks it will. So I'm hoping I don't end up with a lot of angry letters when this book comes out. But I think because of the style, because of the simplistic style of it, it allows me and my stories to go places that if you were drawing it more realistically, I don't think you would be able to do that for that age group. I don't know. But at the same time, it's like regardless of whatever audience it was for, it's for me. Like this is what I want to see. I'm not trying to do this to dumb down horror for a younger group or anything. This is straight up as much horror as I can pack into it and scares as I can, fill it with. But it is just the aesthetic and the place where I want to be creating stuff. I think the Puzzle Agent game kind of hit that note a little bit too, and it was rewarding to see that there was a lot of people that seemed to like that as well. And I just
Yeah.
don't see a lot of that out there. I guess the Simpsons and the Treehouse of Horror stuff that they do, those special Halloween episodes, kind of get there, but because it's the Simpsons and because it's for network TV, there's
Yeah.
parameters in place that they won't exceed and it'll stay within. And they do it really well and it's super clever. A lot of those episodes are so great. But there is a safeness to where it's going to go that
Yeah.
pulls the teeth out of it, and it's not as
Yeah.
effective as I want it to be.
When your boundaries are already set, there's an expectation, like you say, to kind of, like if I saw a horror film come out of Disney, my brain would click and go, it's a Disney film. There's only so much they would do, and there's only kind of in this environment. But I think you're right. I think what I appreciate about kind of your cartoons and your comics, like you say, is because they're so simple, it allows you to really focus on the subject as well. Because I think that's something which I suffer as a pitfall from, because I originally started studying fine art, and most of what we were pushed with was, when you create something, it needs to be, almost photorealistic, or it needs to be heavily colored, heavily designed. You need to add all these extra details to things, otherwise no one will pay attention to it. And then as I got older and I discovered graphic designers and comic artists and animators, and I found those designs were so simple, one line, creating a character. It meant that you were seeing it on screen and you're going, oh, well, I've already ingested everything visual I could about this moment. So now I'm paying attention to the subject and I'm paying attention to everything else around it. And like you say, it gives you that false sense of security, because your brain's gone, oh, that's great. I see a cat. It's a cat. I know it's a cat. It's one color. It's simply shaped. Oh wait, no. What's happening with the cat?
Yeah, I guess it pushes the concept and the
Yeah.
idea further in front, and you're not looking through all the quantitative things of detailing and lighting and all that. Yeah. Yeah, I don't
I
know. It's
mean,
interesting, but it's what I want to see. It's what I want. That's where I want to be. That's the world I want to be walking around in or creating.
yeah.
Is
I
that
think
level of simplicity.
I think stop motion has that effect as well. I think a
Yes.
lot of people see stop motion and they automatically assume, oh, it's fun, it's cute, it's for children. And then you watch some of them. I think the main one which jumps to mind is of kind of like a bait and switch is Mary and Max, which is I
Yeah, very
recommend
heavy.
it. Yeah, I recommend it to everybody when they mention stop motion, and they're like, oh, they don't make adult stop motion. Like, have you seen Mary and Max? Because on the surface, it's quite fun. It's about a young girl living in Australia, but then later on, it's very dark and deals with a
Yeah.
lot of adult subjects. But I think
Yeah.
a lot of people get blindsided by that.
Yep. Yeah. I got to most recently storyboard on Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio,
Oh wow, okay.
and that was a great project. That was like one of the most fun things probably since the days of Coraline to work on, because it's Guillermo del Toro and Mark Gustafson both directing it, and there was no pulling punches in terms of the horror level stuff. Like that was part of the flavor, the tone of what they wanted to do. So it was so fun to work on because it hit those notes again of um, I got to storyboard the bit where Pinocchio first comes to life, and
Wow.
and it was great because again they were like, yeah, don't hold back, like I want you to, I got to make Pinocchio look like the most weird twisted heap of limbs and wood coming to life, and they wanted it very Frankenstein-y kind of feeling, and
Yeah.
it was so cool to work on stuff like that that just embraces again just doing scary stuff with really simple and abstracted things. I don't know, it's really endlessly fun, I guess.
Yeah. If you can make the mundane scary, I think that's a key, right? That's a talent. I'd
Mm-hmm.
say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was kind of thinking back of oh, what was I just going to say? I was thinking back to the Pinocchio film recently, actually, and kind of I was trying to place it with other films in terms of its tone, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of kind of the subject, and obviously I've seen the original Pinocchio and seen various films since then, and I was struggling to find where I would recommend it
Hmm.
as a film because it's very high fantasy and it's very, like you say, it has very dark moments, and it reminded me of the films I saw as a child, like Watership Down,
Oh wow, yes.
and just thinking, yeah, I mean, if I was back in the 90s, I would have shown that to a child because it's a children's film, it's an animated film. But now I think a lot of people would be very wary of it, and I think the same would be said with Pinocchio. You know,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people would want their children to watch it because it's a film about Pinocchio. But at the same time, they might pull it back a bit and go, maybe not, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, again, it didn't really pull any punches. It didn't shy away from things that were going to get a little bit like, ooh, let's talk about death, and things that I think a lot of parents would like to sort of scaffold up and not hit their kids with so early. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, the world we're living in, you can, if you are in a place where the kids can handle that kind of subject matter, I think it's important, and it felt uh that was part of that project. It felt important to work on that thing. Like you
Mhm.
knew it was going to be something different. You never know how they're going to be received when you're working on these things, but
Yeah,
it's been really rewarding to see that it, for the most part, everybody's really embraced that movie. It's been like winning all the awards at all the events, and it's like, wow, okay, that's great. That is so cool that what they were shooting for is being welcomed by, at least by the critics and everybody. So
yeah. Do you think? I mean, as someone who's done a lot of projects, works on a lot of things, like we said at the very beginning of this. Do you think that's perhaps more important? Is that you're working on things which you think are important and things which you find valuable than just being involved in projects?
yeah, ideally, but I
Yeah.
won't, yeah, I won't like, I won't lie. Like, there are certain realities to working as an artist where you're like, yeah, I really need to make money to pay rent this month. And so you're going to work on things that you may not be so full-hearted into,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess recognizing those opportunities when they do show up, and the projects that are special, and finding ways to get involved with them and work on them is hugely rewarding for sure. Yeah.
I agree.
And
Yeah. And we've all had
ideally,
jobs to make money.
yep. Yep. And I'm sure we will continue to have those jobs where things, but then some stuff surprises you. Like you mentioned the Goofy movie. I was working, that was very early in my career. I was working as an in-betweener and a cleanup artist on it. It was the early 90s. It was very old school. We were still working on paper and scanning things in. And it was really hard work because Disney characters are very sophisticated designs, and everybody knows exactly what Goofy looks like, and they'll tell you when you're off model. And
Yeah.
it was a lot of hard work, and Have never really been, honestly, a huge Disney person. I fully respect and appreciate the level of skill involved and the whole history of it. It's,
Yeah.
no denying any of that stuff. But I wasn't a huge Disney fan anyway. It was a bit of a slog for me to work on, but I learned a lot working on that job. But we were only getting a little piece of the movie at a time because it was being mostly animated in France, and then I was living and working in Toronto, Canada, and we would just get those packages with the scenes, and we would clean them up and in between them and send them back. And I think they got sent to the States after that to whatever, put them together. Anyway, had no idea what that film was really about.
Hmm.
Just that it was a goofy movie, like the title said. And went to the theater when it came out to see it, and I was like shocked and surprised at how deep a lot of moments in that film were. Like there was some surprisingly really sincere, like uncomfortable, interesting bits between the dynamic between father and son and the whole.
Mm.
And so there's a lot of times been jobs where I thought it was just for the money, and it was maybe, but they surprise you. There are things that are being said and expressed in these pieces of art that you didn't think were there.
Definitely, yeah, I can agree. I've been in situations where you're doing a lot of the same thing or doing something very simple, and you're like, this isn't what I want to do.
Yeah, this isn't me.
Yeah, this isn't me. Then you get to the end, and you're like, actually, no, it wasn't for me, but I learned something, and it's making people happy, and that's the key.
Yeah, yeah.
Alrighty, I think we're coming up to time, so I only really have one question left for you. Right?
Okay.
Well, actually, I mean, I have two things. I want first off, I want to get a little sycophantic and just say thank you for the work which you've done, because your films have meant a huge amount to me, and your comics and whatnot. So I very appreciate for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks.
But I also realize that there's not much way to follow that up when someone gives you a massive compliment and much less to say. So I'll move on quickly to my next point, which is I'm asking every guest this year, who should I speak to next? Who do you think would
Oh my
enjoy coming
gosh.
on and doing this?
Who to speak to next? Let me think. Because we've been talking so much about stop motion and all that it entails, somebody who's always amazing to talk to in anything on any subject would be Georgina Haynes. And she was the head of puppets on the Pinocchio film.
Wow, okay.
So Georgina's always fun to talk to.
If I can find a way to contact her, I will.
I can probably help you along with that. I don't know, I don't know what her schedule or things are like these days. She's a busy lady, but yeah, she's always great for a conversation.
Definitely, yeah. I'm as I kind of say to every guest, I'm happy and willing to chat to anybody and everybody. I find people who I find interesting, but this year I've taken a little step and like I should find other people who would be recommended to me as well.
That's smart because just keep branching out. And
Eventually, one by one, I'll just gradually gain people, and everyone will know because I'll have interviewed them at least once in their lifetime.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Alrighty, in that case, we're coming to the end. Anything else you want to say to anybody, Graham?
No, just that this has been a very pleasant chat. Like I said, I got the impression this would be fun and casual, and my goodness, it was.
I mean, that's always the goal. I can tick a box there. In that case, thank you for coming on again, and we will talk to these guys later.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks.